This is the Food for Thought podcast with your host, Jack. Let's begin.
Okay, so welcome back to Food for Thought. Well, the last couple of episodes, I've been reflecting a bit on what I got wrong and what still holds up. And today I want to take that out of theory and into a real conversation. Because it's one thing to talk about how conversations should work, it's another thing to actually do it. So today I'm joined by my friend Tom, and we're going to explore something that affects all of us. Why do people see the same situation so differently? And is it actually possible to understand each other without trying to win? Okay, well, joining me, like I said, is my friend Tom. Welcome back, Tom. It's been a while since you've been on the show.
Hey, how you doing, Jack? Thanks for having me.
Sure, man. Uh, Hopefully, we can come up with some kind of insight today regarding this. Uh, you know, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, so this talking point right here basically is why people see things differently. So let me just throw the first question at you, Tom. Why do you think people see the same situation differently?
Oh my God, it's all the things that you've accumulated since you were a little kid, right? In your brain, through culture, through interactions with people, through it's the lens that you look through that was built over the years, and the very beginnings or the very basis of that lens you don't even remember anymore, right? Because that piece was formed when you were like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old.
Uh huh.
Um, and it's just now it's just normal. It's just part of you. It's just who you are. Like, you will make decisions often not really realizing what is really driving them, right? It's just the wiring that was built over the years that drives, those, in my
Right.
opinion anyways.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. There's a ton of things that um, give you your worldview, right? What kind of a class of a family were you brought up in? If you value work, maybe you were brought up in a working class family, blue collar family, for example. Your religion, your experience, uh, on the day to day life, like when you go to school, how you interact with people, how people interact with you, their attitude towards you, whether you start building up walls in your life early. Um, and there's something I heard that says basically the person that we are in adulthood is basically formed by the time we're about 7 or 8, you know? And I don't think you can argue really against that, you know? I think that's pretty much it. I think most people would agree on all of this.
I think
Um,
it's pretty well established at this point,
yeah,
through, well, reasonably good science or proper science.
by science, you're talking about psychology, correct?
Yeah, psychology, evolutionary psychology, just, yeah, all kinds of, yeah, whichever branch of psychology it is or branches that study, human behavior and behavior development.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said, whichever branch it is that studies, how the brain and the mind forms over the years.
Right, right. Developmental psychology, maybe that's what it is. I'm not sure. But let me throw this one at you. Do you think the major portion of people are actually aware of that? All of that comes into how we make decisions and how we see things, or not
I
really
mean,
at all?
is an average person aware of how that works and what that really is, or how whether an average person understands that this is in fact the mechanism for how they make decisions.
Yes, that's
Is
right.
that what you're asking? An average
That's
person, I
right.
would say no.
Okay.
No, I think
So
it
let me throw the
takes.
next question at you. Do you think if the major portion of people knew all of this, understood all of this, that they would think twice before doing things, saying things, making certain decisions?
Think it would start influencing your decisions, right? Because it'll, I mean, kind of knowing that or believing, at least believing that, I think steers you towards being more introspective and puts things in perspective more, meaning I think you would be more likely to consider other points of view more and not be as stuck in your own beliefs or worldview as much. I think it allows you to be more open minded.
Okay. Okay. So this kind of is shifting us towards another thing that I want to talk about. Um, Basically, all of this would affect the conversations that we have, right? Your decision making, your psychology, your worldview is gonna influence how you interact with other people in conversations, right?
For sure.
So
Yeah. I mean,
basically, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, anything that's any conversation that is meaningful in some way, right? So, I mean, if you're talking about the weather, it's one thing. If you're just shooting the, but if you're sharing experiences, from your life for whatever reason, whether you're trying to reach a decision or not, yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to color, how you speak, the meaning you derive from what the other person says. So yeah,
Okay. So with that in mind, let me throw this other question out to you and to everybody else listening. Do you think people actually listen during conversations, or do they just wait to respond? In other words, does their worldview, that is basically part of them, that is actually kind of decided maybe for them a long time ago, does that drive people to actually listen to the other side of the conversation, or does it make people just wait to respond with pre-memorized beliefs?
I think there is at least two kinds of people here, right? Those who don't have the patience or the will or the ability, maybe, to first listen and really try to understand.
Hmm.
And there's going to be a portion of those people who haven't developed the ability maybe to do that, maybe are too young, right? Like if you're a child, maybe it's not in your set of abilities to actually sit there and try to listen first before you try to respond and share your own point of view on something. I mean, I think
Okay.
you develop that, the older you get, the wiser you get. I think the more likely you are to listen first, really understand
Okay.
the other person's point of view, before you share your side of the story and try to decide on anything.
Okay. What about the waiting to respond part? Do you think people are kind of like so programmed by their worldview that they don't even try to listen? They just wait to regurgitate, what their worldview says onto other people.
Well, but now you're getting into, do you think for yourself or not, or do you just repeat other people's shit, right?
Basic.
Um,
Well, that too. That too. Yes. Yes.
I mean, I've met both. I've met people who, outside of their, expertise in life, like maybe their job, maybe their hobby. Like I've met one guy where I used to rent a room from one guy at one point that he was a fisherman and he knew everything about fishing. So you could ask him any questions about fishing, and he had definite opinions and built up a ton of skill over the years, right? And then he also uh, was a flooring guy, so he knew everything and took great pride in doing flooring and carpet. Great. So in those two areas, he definitely, it was worth asking him something. But if it came to any topic outside of that it was pretty obvious that he didn't really know. And in those cases, he could only repeat the sound bites, if you will, that he heard from others or TV or something like that.
Right, right,
So he was very focused on those two areas, and he was an expert in those. And having a conversation there was great, but you step out of that, and it was like you couldn't get anything useful really, out of him, right? Like, so I don't know, that makes him not well rounded, I guess, or something like that, but also, very useful, in those two specific areas. So I don't know, or interesting in those two specific areas. Um, what was the original question?
okay. That no, that's cool. Uh, Basically, the original question was: do you think people actually listen in during conversations to the other side, or do they just wait to respond? You say one thing, I listen to what you say, and I'm ready to club you over the head with my rhetoric
so
and my beliefs.
so there was both kinds. So I'll bring back the carpet and fishing guy's example. If you asked him, if you had a conversation with him about it, any topic other than the fishing and the carpet, he would wait. He wouldn't wait. Maybe he would wait, but he wouldn't really think about necessarily what your point of view was, right? He would only be able
Okay.
to just give back the soundbite back, um, and he would only wait to respond.
Okay.
Yeah, like he. So yeah, I think there's both kinds, and I think being the person that actually listens first and is able to emotionally put aside how he feels at the moment about the other person's statement or opinion, right? And then to sort of hold back this urge to just have the knee jerk reaction to just say the thing that's on your mind.
Mhm.
It's I think it's a somewhat of a difficult thing to do, but some people do it. Like, I think if you're a properly formed adult, a thinking adult and a self-introspecting adult, then yeah, you can pull it off, and it does happen. I've seen that too.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Well, it does happen where people actually listen to the other side. I think it's not not so common anymore. It used to be. Maybe it's a practice or an art of trying to put yourself in the other guy's shoes for a moment before you say something, right? Uh,
yeah, that's exactly that,
Whereas
actually,
most
right?
people, right, and most people just wait to respond. Uh, Basically, I think that leads to a lot of miscommunications, which is going to lead to a lot of emotional reactions. So it's kind of like a cascade effect. You know, you're saying something because you need to ram your worldview down my throat, and of course, I'm going to have an emotional reaction to whatever you're saying because maybe I misunderstood you. Whereas you actually are trying to be, give me good information, but it just, maybe comes out all wrong.
Here, what the situation is and what the relationship between the two people speaking matters, right? If you piss stuff at each other, right, you're probably gonna tend to discuss things one way, right? Like
Okay.
if if the thing is emotionally charged, you probably are going to be more likely to not really listen, but just wait to respond,
Okay.
right? But in a situation where you have the psychological safety with someone, like somebody, it's somebody that's close to you, somebody that cares for you and uh, respects you, and you respect them, the conversation is likely to be much different, right? That in that scenario, it is way more likely to actually have a conversation that matters and leads somewhere, and leads to positive change in life rather than in the first scenario.
Okay. I think a lot of emotional reactions during conversations, not in the second one you're talking about, where you actually know someone and you're emotionally invested. In the other case, two people are arguing different political viewpoints, and it gets heated right away. And what I think is coming into play is that um, I may have said this in a different episode somewhere. I'm not sure, but it's kind of familiar. That I think I said this anyway. What happens is you say something that I don't like because it's not part of my worldview. I get heated immediately because you're attacking my worldview with your worldview, and now this is like attacking me. So then there's an emotional response, and things just get out of hand. Just basically, it's a fight. It's not. It's no longer a conversation.
Well, you use the term, you attack my point of view, like,
It is
all right,
seen as
if
such. It is seen as
well,
such.
it can be, and it depends how it's said, right? Too, like, again, it depends on the situation. If for whatever reason you triggered by some statement, and that all of a sudden makes you think that you're being, I don't know, criticized or uh,
Attacked, basically.
yeah, or attacked, then you're probably gonna, at the very least, be like, whoa, 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 you know, what are we doing here? And
Exactly.
if the other person doesn't, right, continues to attack, then what are you going to do? You just got to basically protect yourself, or walk away. I mean, I don't personally like to get myself into like heated arguments, because I don't think they lead anywhere.
Exactly.
Uh, but 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 you also got to be adult enough, and I don't know, wise enough to not allow yourself to be dragged into those, and know when to just pull away or just disconnect, right?
Right. However, I would like to say something because you said something very interesting and potentially very important. Because you said, "Do you protect yourself or walk away?" Well, are you protecting yourself, or are you protecting your worldview, what you've been taught, how you've grown up, what you've been indoctrinated in? Indoctrinated in is probably the wrong word. You have things inculcated into your head from the time you're young. You start going to school, they tell you you got to work hard, you got to do this, you got to do that. And these things they come under attack in a conversation. So, are you really protecting yourself, or are you protecting your worldview? See, that's the thing. The worldview sometimes becomes inseparable from who we are. At least for I think the major portion of the people. I think that's the problem. One of the one of the many
I mean,
problems, in other words.
yeah, your worldview is part of you, right? I mean, and that the fact that somebody sees things different than you may feel like, well, I don't know, it may feel like an attack on your values or what you hold to be true.
Right.
But again, like, it depends which conversation you're having, and is it an open-minded conversation with somebody who you respect and they respect you, and you can, in fact, have two different points of view that are different and perhaps contradictory, but yet at the same time true. You know what I mean? Like, you can
Hmm.
totally have two different points of view, completely different, contradictory. Yet, if you lay it out, you're like, oh shit! Like, it looks like they both look logically correct, and there is nothing that says here that they aren't true. And at the same time, I mean, what do you do with that?
I don't know. That's a good question. What do we say? What do we do with that? I don't know. I guess it depends on your background, how true it is. Eventually, your worldview is going to determine how true something is. If you're an impartial third person, you could say point A and point B. Person A, person B, they make a point, and logically, those arguments are sound. They're contradictory. They're existing at the same time. But to an impartial person, maybe it's, yeah, you can say, okay, fine. They seem to be both logically sound. But when you're in that conversation, there's no way the other person is making a logical statement. And once
Well, look,
again,
like,
are you being attacked? Are your worldview being attacked? I don't know. Or number two, can you actually change your worldview?
yeah, I think so. I mean, chances are that you probably discovered things throughout life that you even didn't know about at all or thought about totally differently. And then, it took you seeing somebody do it this other way that you realized, oh my God, yeah, I've been doing it like this and it worked for me. But like now I've witnessed this other person firsthand do it this other crazy way and they got results too, or maybe got better results. And you're like, oh my God, okay. Well, it's now clear to me that you could do it this other way that I thought was maybe inappropriate, wrong, I don't know, to this, to that, to the other thing, but it still works. There's always more than one way to skin a cat in most cases.
Actually, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and they're all disgusting and bloody. All right. All right. Some of the ideas I want to throw around next are changing your mind, like we just touched on. What triggers reflection and what doesn't work? Well, we just mentioned something about changing your mind, changing your worldview. In fact, have you ever changed your mind about something important, something on the order of worldview?
Yeah, like the specific examples. I mean, the answer is yes. The specific examples are sort of nuanced and uh, trying to think. Yeah, I might not be able to give you like a good explanation for a good description of the examples in my life for that right now, but yeah, my first reaction is that for sure, several times.
Right. Do you have a specific example we could talk about?
Well, no, well, that's the thing. I'm
I
kind of
mean, if they're
not.
too personal, we can,
No, I don't think it's
you don't
necessarily
want to talk
personal.
about it, that's cool too.
It's just providing an explanation that's, oh, good and concise. And yeah, I would have like this one. I feel like I would need to not be put on a spot and like kind of think about it for a few minutes and then come back with some sort of a, you know what I mean? Like maybe in a few days, come back and give an explanation.
You want to put the situation together in your head. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, a little bit. Like kind of think
No
about it
problem.
on my own.
Well, if it comes to you now, you can just talk about it later. It's not a big deal. Uh,
Okay.
i well, have you ever changed your mind about something important? What? Well, I guess so. This is where I get to my own personal, let's say, voyage of what I'm talking about right now. Here's what I was talking about in episode one. Episode one was basically, the title was "What I Got Wrong." So I used to believe that clear explanations equals a change the mind. Just as long as you explain something to someone in a clear fashion, they will be persuaded to change their mind. And that's not true. At least I
I
don't
have to
believe it is
agree.
anymore. You know, because you can say, whatever you want to people in the clearest way possible, and some people they're never gonna change their mind. So that's one thing I got wrong. Another thing I got wrong, I used to treat conversations as something to lead towards agreement, and sometimes you can't come to agreement. So that's probably not correct either. You know, another thing is understanding would naturally flow from clarity. To make somebody understand something, it goes back to being a clear explanation. You're as clear as possible. The other person's going to understand and change their mind. And I don't believe that's true either. And repeated explanations will lead to a different result. Yeah, and that's like insanity right there. That's never going to happen. You know. So if you want, we could talk about that. Any one of those or a combination thereof.
I mean, all the points you mentioned just now, it's never this or the other thing. I think it's for all of them. It's a spectrum. Some people are gonna go this way, some people are gonna go that way, and some people, and then things will change over time too. Like you can have the first conversation on a topic, and maybe you don't reach any conclusions, or maybe you don't reach any sort of an agreement. But the second, third, fourth, fifth time you talk about it, right? Things you start doing your own research, perhaps you start trying things that were suggested to see how they work out for you, right? And through that process, a year down the road or whatever, or in conversation 10, you may have a point of view that's very different from when you first started.
Right.
I mean, all of this is colored by how we change throughout life as well.
Anyway, just to mention a couple of other things, just to throw them out there. Uh, just another thing that I got wrong because just to talk about it since it's kind of fresh out there because the episode one was just like this is episode three. Episode one talked about this. I used to underestimate the role of trust and emotion in conversations, and also used to assume that people responded mainly to logic and reasoning. And there's this big emotional factor in there also that takes a big part in the conversations. Basically, I don't want to rehash everything, but I came to this realizations, and one of them, maybe the biggest one, is that you don't change people's minds by explaining better, because pushing is going to create resistance. And at the end of it, people change their own minds by research or contemplation, but changing someone's mind on something is very, very difficult.
What I think works? I think what works is in a conversation, bringing the person to a point or the information around what you would like the person to choose. Let's say, like you would never actually say that you should do this or the other thing, but if you're trying to convince someone, I think it's effective if you talk around what the solution you would like the other person to choose, never explicitly stating that you should do this or the other thing. And you will hope that when they see those other factors around the topic or the conclusion that you'd like them to make, that they will then find it on their own or see it for themselves first. And what that
Okay.
allows to do is that they see it as their own idea. And if it's their own idea, they are way more likely to be like, oh, yeah, this is what I want to do, or this is what I should do, versus you telling them, hey, no, you do that, or you do the other thing. Um,
Right. Well, it kind of ties in what you just said to what I just said. They're gonna change their own mind, basically.
kind of, right? But your job, like, right? But okay, if the conversation, if the goal of the conversation is for you to convince them of something, all I'm saying is that
Right.
Don't present it as, hey, I know the answer. Here's what it is. You should do that. Again, just give them the information around what the right decision is, and hopefully you can present it in such a way that they will feel like they have enough, they through the conversation they have gathered enough information to make that decision on their own, and that is much more powerful
No,
than you
that's
trying to
good. I
convince.
agree with that. I just think they're related. What you just said and what I just said. That's all. But
For sure.
getting back to us up here. Let me see what's next on my little list. Okay, next talking points and question I'm about to line up are understanding versus agreement, limits of a conversation, and respect versus truth. Okay, so the core question of this little piece right here is: can you really understand someone without agreeing?
Yeah, totally. I would think so.
What about
I mean,
in
it's a short
general, not
answer,
not just you
but
personally?
so again, spectrum, right? If I'm one example of this being possible or true, then there must be others. And I think most adults, right, have some capacity to, listen and understand despite disagreeing. And, you see the arguments and you see the logic and you're like, yeah, all right, it could totally work that way or it could totally be that despite, me having a totally different experience with it.
Okay. Well, speaking about myself, I would have to say many times it's happened to me where I'd be in a conversation with someone, disagree, and I would try to understand, and I wouldn't be able to understand. We would end up in disagreement with me scratching my head saying, how on earth is this person wired to be saying such crazy stuff?
Yep. Been there, done that.
Right? So I think what you're saying, what that kind of a situation can both be true. Um, let's face it, not everybody is going to have the same, um, let's say, emotional intelligence where they try to put themselves in the other person's shoes. They actually understand them and they try to argue a point, which is the counterpoint to what the other person is saying. But not everybody can do that. Hopefully, I'm learning because that's what I want.
Yeah, but what do you do in those situations, though? I mean, what's the best that one can do? I mean, you can either give it more time, right? You try to keep it respectful the best you can.
Okay.
Um, and again, if it's the first conversation on a topic, right, you may just not have the information that you've gathered on your own to support or clearly dispute the other person's point of view.
Okay.
But let's say, over the next year, you have the conversation around the topic several more times, chances are that your point of view is going to shift, right? Because you're going to find out more info. You're going to have, fresh information, new information. Maybe you'll go read something about on the topic.
Right.
Now, who knows? Maybe you'll get a chance to do some of the thing on your own and be like, oh my God, I never tried this before, but now that I have, I can see like where you're coming from, that sort of a thing, right?
Yeah, of course.
We
People
evolve.
usually people tend to grow. At least we hope so, right? So it's quite possible you're gonna change your mind on something or learn more about what you believe, and then be able to defend it better.
A trivial thing like, or trivial, a simple or a silly thing like your mood one day versus your mood another day in a conversation may make a difference, right?
Okay.
Like, let's say, you're having a good day, right? The conversation is probably going to be very different than if your day wasn't so good that led up to the conversation. Um,
Yeah, those are
it's
usually
just
just
one
emotional
factor.
responses. Speaking of which, what we talked about just a mention, what we just mentioned a moment ago, growth and people. So, what do you think actually helps people grow besides the usual things? Because you have you know maybe people growing through knowledge, uh, emotional maturity. Usually, you have to get your heart broken before you start to mature. emotionally. What is it about conflict and striving and having all of these problems that makes us grow?
Conflict and striving. But in general, what makes you
Yes.
grow is pressure of some sort or stress of some sort, and it's the cycle of stress and relaxation and rest. And whether that's for physical exercise, whether that's for mental exercise, I think it's kind of the same idea. It's true for both, or there's probably other areas where this applies. I can't think of right now, but
Right.
for muscle growth or for physical performance, right? You work out, you sleep, you eat, you give yourself a day, whatever, a day or two of rest, and then you do it again, and through that, and that the amount of stress you give yourself has to be roughly the right amount. It can't be too much, it can't be too little. You never have any gains, right? If you only work out once a month, that's not going to do much for you. If you try to work out 6 times a day, yeah, you just basically going to break yourself and spend the next 6 months trying to recover, right? Or you're going to break some bones or whatever, or rip muscles, and now you spend 2 weeks in a hospital, just trying to walk again or something. So too much is obviously not good, but somewhere in between there, is the sweet spot. So let's say you work out, whatever, once a day, every other day, or something like that, right? And you lift only this much weight. All right, that leads to results over time. Makes you grow, makes you stronger, makes you better. Emotionally or mentally, the same thing. Um, you try to read 6 books in one day. I don't know. I think you're going to hate yourself the next day. Plus, you're probably not going to finish. You're probably going to be like, oh my God, I thought I could do six in one day. I only did half. What does that say about me? So, balance, right? Yin yang, baby. I don't know.
Uh, I'm not sure what you're talking about at this particular moment, but I agree with the whole pressure theory. I think it's pretty much an established thing. You know what I mean? Where like for example, like fish in the ocean, they grow bigger the deeper they are because there's more pressure. You know, like certain fish get really big because they live pretty deep in the ocean. So there's emotional pressure, there's work pressure, monetary pressure helps you try to work harder, learn new skills. You know, uh, but it all comes down to that one word, pressure.
Of just emotional growth, right? You have to go through some difficult things in life, and then hopefully you're resilient enough to pick yourself back up from that, and that teaches you a lot of stuff. First time you go through something difficult, let's say a parent passing away or a friend passing away, or seeing some horrible stuff, or living through something emotionally difficult, it teaches you, right? Once you go through that experience, you look at your own life a little different. The lens through which you look at the world changes. It's the emotional baggage. Um, your psychological makeup changes, every time that,
Yeah,
right? It's
absolutely.
it's it's the what psychological version of the physical exertion.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was talking about just a couple of minutes ago when I said, you start to mature when you get your heart broken because
Yeah, it's one of them for
it's
sure.
like going through something like that, whatever it is, romantic or whatever kind of a thing it is, kind of relationship, someone dying,
Yeah,
being
rejection, man.
betrayed by a friend, a rejection, or breakup, or whatever it is. You got to have your heart broken to start to mature. Um. Anyway, that's basically all we have to say for today, unless you have something to add to that, Tom.
Nah, I don't know how people deal with having difficult conversations, right?
Basically,
Or yeah,
actually, I can add one thing before I start wrapping up the episode. Basically, I think I've gotten better with this whole communication thing. Um,
Sure. God damn, I
it's
hope
been
so.
thanks. It's not so easy. It's pretty tough. You got to work on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
easy. Definitely not easy.
But anyway, listen. I think this was a good conversation. Okay. Once again, open and honest. So understanding someone doesn't mean agreeing with them. But without understanding, there's really nowhere to go. Maybe that's the shift. Not trying to win the conversation, but trying to actually see the other person clearly. Because that's where real change starts. Not from pressure, but from reflection. Thanks once again to my friend Tom for joining me. I wish maybe we could have him on the show more often. We'll see about that in the future. I know he's a busy guy, so it may not be possible. But thanks, Tom.
No, of course, my pleasure.
Cool. Listen, if this conversation got you thinking, share it with someone you'd actually want to have a real conversation with. Hit the like and subscribe. Hit the notifications button to stay up to date and keep us going. Drop comments below on your thoughts or share your own experiences with us. It could possibly help someone else. So thanks for listening to Food for Thought. And remember, question what you know, challenge what you believe, and see where the truth takes you. I'll see you in the next episode.
Our journey continues step by step in time. Let's walk this road together, yours and mine.